Day 154 to 9:02 p.m. Tanyon Strait, Matutinao Coastal Area, Municipality of Badian, Province of Cebu. A beam of light pierced through the heavens under the darkness of the night. To those that witnessed this astonishing scene, it looked like a beacon of hope, lighting everyone's path in these dark times. Being shot at an angle, it did not soar straight up the sky. Instead, it flew miles away towards the northeast of the country. The beam of light illuminated the skies over central Visayas and southeast Luzon. The light was even visible in the eastern coastal areas of central, south, and the southeastern areas of North Luzon. Their already chaotic night in the Philippines became even worse as people witnessed this phenomenon. The beam of light might have only lasted a few seconds, however, it was more than enough to shake the hearts of the already dismayed people. To Mark, on the other hand, it was a beacon of death rather than hope. It was good that his speed and reflexes were heightened. If he did not manage to evade that attack, he would have been pulverized instantly. That beam of light was created by the raw discharge of magical energy. It was similar to the magical beams that Diwata Araya used to fight. Nonetheless, the strength of the two attacks was not comparable. Diwata Araya's light beam was refined, while the crocodile's attack was crude. However, the energy discharge from this infected godly being was, without a doubt, more than 100 times stronger. Mark managed to dodge it in the last second. Nonetheless, his already tattered clothes and skin were scorched by the heat that the beam emanated. The parts of his skin unprotected by his armor had turned black and crusty. Tisk. Mark clicked his tongue as he winced in pain. He might be used to feeling pain, but he never experienced having half of his body burned like this. It felt like he was suddenly doused in boiling water fresh from the stove while being grilled in charcoal at the same time. Frowning, Mark tapped the core of his armor. The armor he was wearing was crimson in his armorized form. The poor little guy was also suffering from pain as the armor's core was almost scorched. It was fortunate that the armor's core where Crimson's remaining liquefied body resided was on the left side of Mark's chest, above his heart, or else, it might have turned out worse. Slowly, Mark's regenerative abilities kicked in. The crusted skin began to fall off, revealing newly healed skin. However, even with this regeneration ability, Mark was sure he was not an opponent to this giant crocodile. For the first time since the apocalypse started, Mark found an enemy that he was unsure if he had any chance of winning. Even though Mark had encountered godly beings before, it was the first time that it was an actual enemy. Furthermore, it was someone that could not be reasoned with. Mark's instincts were screaming for him to escape. He might be a powerful individual in many aspects and was still growing. However, it was too early for him to contend against something like head-on. Unfortunately, while Mark was unsure about his chances of winning, there was something else he was sure about. This giant crocodile who stood on the waters, it would not let him get away that easily. After all, even if a person already had a plate of food ready to eat, one would still aim at a more delicious one once it was served. Being the more delicious food, Mark had been marked by the enemy. Mark observed the enemy, getting ready for any incoming attack. However, no attack came. Instead, Sonogo, or his infected husk, stared in Mark's direction without moving. It caused confusion towards Mark. Furthermore, he could not read its emotional fluctuations clearly as it was an infected creature even if it was a king type. Not to mention that it was barely inside his range of detection. Is it going to attack or not? Mark questioned in his mind. If not, he would not hesitate to escape this place. He was not stupid to jump into a battle that could cause his death without reason. Well, Mark had a reason. Just what kind of mutagen stone and mental crystal would he get from an infected godly being? He was curious. Even so, it was an extremely dangerous case of curiosity. One mistake, and Mark could get vaporized in an instant. Never mind. Let's just leave. Mark decided, but before he could make a single move, the gigantic crocodile did. It slightly opened its mouth, which made Mark thought that it would speak. So far, all monarch types he encountered knew how to speak human language, albeit most of them were broken. However, the only sound that this gigantic crocodile let out was a slight grunt. Mark was confused even more. This king type did not know how to speak. Well, even if the language was different, since the infected would only use the leftover memories of their host, it should at least be able to utter an audible word. But then, Mark remembered. Humans suffer communication problems after not having any human contact in just several months up to a few years. There was no need to mention Sonogo, who had been sealed for hundreds to thousands of years under this deep body of water. In the first place, while Sonogo was given breath by a god and had strength comparable to lower gods, he was still not one of them. Gods themselves were imperfect, not to mention their creations. Within hundreds to thousands of years of isolation, it was very likely that Sonogo's mind deteriorated. There was no need to mention that he was kept with the body of an animal. If that was the case, then this infected creature had no clear memory to inherit from its body, not even language. Nonetheless, for a king-type infected, language was not always necessary. Even without talking, they could rule their horde. And what horde should be talked about this time? PSSH. What the hell? Mark evaded in a hurry once more. This time, however, it was not a beam of light that attacked him. PSSH, PSSH, PSSH. Countless sounds of water splashing echoed all over the place. Blurry figures were shooting out of the water, aiming to take down Mark. Even in Mark's eyes, the speed of these blurry things was too fast. Without hesitation, Mark's eyes glowed purple. His senses heightened, and the trajectory of the attacks was predetermined. That was when he saw the actual appearance of these things shooting at him from the water. Flying fishes. Mark murmured as he evaded another volley of attacks. Flying fish, scientifically named Exocetidae. It was a family of marine fish known for their powerful leaps and ability to glide above the water. Now, commanded by the gigantic crocodile, a school of infected flying fishes as large as cannonballs were shooting at Mark at the speed of a sniper rifle bullet. Mark had barely recovered from the burns he received, and yet, he was being attacked once more. Tisk. Mark clicked his tongue. I really need to leave. And there, Mark flapped his wings before turning into a surge of black mist that floated away swiftly. Mark escaped without doing any unnecessary provocations. It was the best decision he could make in these circumstances. Of course, the infected group was confused as to where their prey suddenly went. Nonetheless, as Mark barely gave out anything for these infected to track him, they were left unable to find him. The giant crocodile released a grunt as the prey it detected suddenly vanished into the shadows. However, it did not seem to have any notion to chase or find Mark. It was pretty much like the actual behavior of a crocodile. Depending on the situation or climate, crocodiles were barely seen actively chasing prey outside their territories. Instead, they would sit still hiding in the water until they were approached by the unknowing prey. That was when they would strike in a sudden attack to hunt. It was like how the giant crocodile made a surprise attack at Mark the moment he got close enough. And now that Mark retreated and escaped, it had no notion to chase at all. Instead, it concentrated its attention on the water it sent inland. It was waiting for the dead bodies the water would bring back to its mouth. Asterisk asterisk. Gurgur. Are you okay? Did you get hit by that beam? Master. May and Amihan exclaimed, seeing Mark's state as he landed before them. Papa. Uncle. It was the same for the girls as their faces were filled with worry as they approached Mark. Of course, everyone in Mark's group was concerned. When they left, the worst he had was his tattered pants. Now, half of his body was scorched and was amidst healing. I'm all right. I didn't get hit. I just need a few minutes to heal. If I actually got hit by that, I won't even be here anymore. Mark said as he sat down. Those words of Mark, however, made May frown. If what he said was true, then he was in danger earlier. And yet, he had the guts to joke around. Okay. I won't joke about it. Mark understood May's thoughts. Can you help me remove the burnt skin? It's slowing the healing process. While Mark requested help, he was already tearing the burnt skin off his right arm. The way he did it, however, made everyone wince in pain. He was literally tearing his skin apart, causing more damage than necessary. Mark was not perturbed about it, though, since it would heal soon enough. Even so. Gerger. I'll do it alone, May said, grabbing Mark's left hand. Since she insisted with a serious face, he could only comply. And there. May took out a knife and carefully scraped off the burnt skin. By her expression, she seemed annoyed that Mark got injured like this. As had nothing to do, Mark watched the events still happening at the coast. Their current location was a small mountain southeast of Matutinau and southwest of Kawasan Falls. This mountain was not a very high one and even had a road going through its flattened top. Still, it was high enough to oversee both the two key locations in the previous events. Nonetheless, even though it was a mountain, the water from the surge of the water actually reached half its height. That was how devastating the tsunami the gigantic crocodile unleashed. At the coast, the gigantic crocodile was still waiting like a statue. After all, its food had yet to arrive. "Boss, are we going to fight that thing?" Edsel approached Mark and asked while looking at the same scenery. "What do you think?" Mark asked. "I think we better leave this place. That creature feels too dangerous." "I have the same thoughts." Mark agreed to Edsel's words. "Depending on the situation, we'll leave immediately after Pephile and the others arrive." "Depending on the situation? What situation, boss?" Pearl could not help but interject, noticing what Mark said. "Well, that crocodile there is likely to be Sinogo from the Visayan myths. A messenger of a sky god Kaptan, who is someone comparable to Bathala. If it's gods we are talking about, then someone will likely arrive here to assess the situation. And also look there," Mark added, pointing at the sky where the beam of light passed through. Ah! May, Emihan, Edsel, and Pearl could only have the same reaction as they saw what Mark pointed at. At the sky, cracks were present. It was the very same phenomenon the other day in Katandwanas. It was the scene of the dimensional barrier cracking. If it was cracked like this, then that girl would definitely appear here. Of course, it was no other than Fourth, the Eye of Amusement, and the one in charge of Southeast Asia. Nonetheless, before the Eye could even appear, Pephile's group arrived. This time, it was not only the four of them. They had someone else, a woman being carried by Pephile. But then, time froze. Edsel froze as he saw the woman. Even if he was small when she supposedly died, he still kept her pictures with him. There was no way he would forget that appearance. On the other hand, Pephile was also frozen as he saw Edsel. Without a doubt, the expressionless Pephile was shocked at Edsel's transformation. And lastly, the woman. Amidst the frozen atmosphere, she spoke. "Why are you two being too dramatic? Seriously, like father, like son." Well, even if she said those words, her eyes were already overflowing with tears of joy. Day 154 to 9:50 p.m., Mountain Area, Municipality of Badian, Province of Cebu. With the miraculous reunion of the mother and child at the center, the whole place was enveloped in silence. Of course, the cause for the silence was not only because of Edsel's reaction. The exact reason was what Celine said just now. Celine mentioned those words as she stared at Edsel, with the fact that everyone here knew that the person they were going to rescue was Pephile's wife. There was nobody else that Pephile's group brought back from the tribe aside from Celine. Mother? No. This is impossible. Edsel yelled out loud, with his voice shaking in disbelief. Mother died when I was a child. Who are you? Far from a dramatic, sweet reunion, what filled Edsel was denial. Edsel's mother died when he was little. Since then, he was living alone, scraping with what he had left. It was the kindness of Pearl's parents that helped him live at that time. It was because his mother suddenly died and left him alone with bare anyone to rely on. And now, someone who looked like his mother appeared, even uttering nonsense about him being the same as his father. As if Edsel had met this father of his even once. No, considering the current circumstances, Celine was saying that Péphile was his father. Father? This guy that he barely even knew? Edsel could not believe this nonsense. Those words of denial turned the atmosphere sour. Without a doubt, Celine was happy to see the child she was separated from for a long time. Nonetheless, it was undeniable that those circumstances led to a child living his life without relying on anyone he could call a parent. Edsel. Listen. Péphile spoke, trying to calm his son. Listen to what? Edsel yelled. What is this? A prank you all prepared for me? If it is, it's not funny. At this time, everyone could tell that Edsel was agitated to the point that he would not listen to reason. Mark stared at Edsel and could not help but nod. Ever since Mark met this boy, he was pretty much independent. Although everyone around him knew that he was an orphan, not a single time he mentioned that he was longing for them. The life of an orphan was never easy. However, while an abandoned child could blame their parents for their hardships, Edsel could not. The only parent he knew, Celine, died. There was no way he would blame a dead person, as death was not something one could avoid. Edsel could only blame himself and wallow in self-pity for his ill fate. And yet, his supposedly dead mother suddenly appeared before his eyes. It was too sudden for him to accept immediately. He could not help but feel angry. Edsel. Celine sobbed. She had no idea what to do. Celine's experience as a parent was too short. Not to mention that she did not even see her child grow up. Although she was happy to see him, it was not wrong to say that Edsel was also a stranger to her at this point. Seeing his mother's crying face and hearing her sobs, Edsel's flaring anger was doused. Even if she was not his mother, seeing her crying was not something Edsel would be able to stand seeing. Tisk. Edsel clicked his tongue, and then, Edzel. Péphile could not help but shout as everyone saw Edsel dash away from them. Edsel. Pearl also called out before chasing after him. It was not only Pearl. Péphile also wanted to give chase. However, he was carrying Celine in his arms. He could not run like this. Don't bother chasing. You'll only make things worse. That was when Mark decided to intervene. Are you telling me to just let them go? We are still in a dangerous place. Péphile turned to Mark and asked. But before replying, Ignis already shot off by Mark's command to protect the two. Happy now? Mark asked. Although we don't have much, we can give him a bit of time to breath. I didn't expect this either, but he took quite a shock. I guess. Seeing that his mother is still alive and learning that he actually had a father turned his world upside down. I don't need to explain that, right? After all, you had been watching him in the shadows all this time. At Mark's words, Péphile could only look down in guilt. It was true that he never left Edsel's side ever since Celine was taken away. However, he never showed himself to his son either until now. The very first encounter between the two was when Péphile told Edsel about Pearl's karma. It had not been long since that happened. Nonetheless, it was something that could not be blamed at Péphile entirely. Both Péphile and Celine decided to let Edsel live the life of a human until he reached adulthood. As a Tamawo, it was not appropriate for Péphile to appear in human society and affect Edsel's life as a human. If the apocalypse did not happen, up until now, Péphile and Edsel might not have met face to face even once. Ha! Péphile could not help but sigh. Mark was right. It would not do good if it was him who chased after Edsel. Still, Mark said as he turned his head towards the direction Edsel ran to. That boy still had to learn things. It might be confusing for him, but running away in this kind of situation is just plain stupid. As if the enemy out there was not enough of a problem already. Don't call my son stupid, of course, a retort came. There was no need to say who that came from. You don't have to retort me like that, madam kidnapped by her husband's brother. Mark shrugged at Celine that was glaring at him. If you don't agree with me, look at that first. Mark then pointed in the direction of the sea. Being prompted, Péphile and the other three that returned with him looked at what Mark was pointing at. Seeing that gigantic crocodile by the shore, there was no need to ask how dangerous the situation was. Damn. So that is the reason why Trua refused to fly all the way here. Barak exclaimed. Their group arrived on foot. It was something that Mark wanted to ask about. Hearing Barak, however, answered the question in his mind. Actually, it was not only Trua. Even Chaflar was in a bad state and was actually hiding behind the mountain. As Celine gazed at that creature by the shore, she also came to understand what danger Mark was talking about. Just seeing the creature made her weaker than she was already. It was as if there was some kind of force directly shaking her soul. It was the same for Geronimo and Padua. As humans, gazing at that godly being brought forth negative effects on them. This was the very same effect that Officer Emilio experienced when he saw the giant crocodile before their settlement fell. Suddenly, a veil of miasma blocked the front. Don't look too much, Mark spoke. Prolonged exposure to that will be bad for regular humans. With their eyes away from the giant crocodile, they finally managed to breathe. Nonetheless, both Geronimo and Padua fell to their knees. Celine would be in the same state if Pephile was not carrying her. Just what in the world is happening there? Pephile turned to Mark and asked. In your plans, it should only be a diversion. Why is something like that present? Well. Mark shrugged his left shoulder. A slightly expected uninvited guest? What the hell are you saying? Pephile grumbled. I mean, it's not really planned, but it's among my expectations that that creature might appear. It could have been better if it did not, though. Look at what I ended up with when I tried to approach it. Mark replied, pointing at the scorched parts of his skin that May was carefully scraping away. Then shouldn't we leave already? Barak interjected. We already finished what we came here for. That creature is way outside our capabilities. I know that we have no chance of winning against it, but we're not really in an extremely urgent situation. Mark said, making everyone pay attention to him. Please explain. Pephile spoke. That thing is a king type, infected. One of the two known subtypes of monarch types. Alongside queen types. So far from my experience, king types are extremely territorial. They won't go out of their territory unless there's a special circumstance. That guy's territory is likely the entirety of the strait. Look at how it was hunting food using the water instead of going inland. So, as long as we don't provoke it, we should be fine here. Mark added. Hearing Mark's words gave everyone a feeling of relief. You're sure about that, boss? Padua asked to confirm. After all, even them, who were soldiers, were not aware of this. I'm pretty sure. Mark nodded. Besides, once the people we are waiting for appear, we might even stand a chance against that. Which people? Geronimo asked in confusion. Mark suddenly raised his head to the sky. Those people. Asterisk. Edsel. Wait. Pearl called out to Edsel, who was running away. However, their physiques were far different from each other. Even if Pearl tried her best, she could not catch up at all. Still, Pearl did not give up. As long as she could see Edsel's back, she continued to chase. However, bam! Pearl fell. Her foot got stuck at a protruding root of a nearby tree and lost balance. It was not a surprising event considering they were running inside the woods in the middle of the night. Fortunately, her painful cry was more than enough to stop Edsel from running. He could not help but rush to her to help. Are you all right? Edsel worriedly helped Pearl stand. Although his emotions were still stirred from the previous events, Pearl's well-being still topped all of it. Got you. However, that was Pearl's reply as she grabbed Edsel's wrists. Now, he could not run away. Edsel could only sigh as his expression became filled with confusion and anger once more. Why are you even chasing after me? Edsel asked. I should be the one asking questions here, Pearl said. Why are you running? You never give up and chased after me even after I did you wrong. Why are you the one running now? At Pearl's questions, Edsel had no answer, and there, Pearl looked down. Remember when I left you? Pearl asked, making Edsel surprised at the sudden shift in topic. Furthermore, it was a painful memory for Edsel. And there, Pearl continued. I have no reason to explain aside from me being blinded and stupid. I brought bad karma for myself because of that. And that's not a proper explanation at all. It further bolstered how stupid I am. Edsel tried to speak, but Pearl blocked his mouth. You don't have to say anything to defend me. I already realized my faults. That is why I hesitated if I really deserved to return to your side. Yet, you allowed that, and here I am. So why not do the same to your parents? Pearl continued. Everyone could tell that it's not some prank. You too, right? You just don't want to accept. I know why, since you had been living alone by yourself since we were little. Your hardships, you don't want to blame anyone for them. If you suddenly have parents, then they were the ones to blame. It is something you don't want to happen. To those words, Edsel remained silent. He could not refute what she was saying at all. I'm not saying that you should accept it blindly. Pearl closed her eyes. Just listen to their explanations first. Maybe they have better reasons than me just being stupid. Why are you calling yourself stupid over and over? Edsel could not help but voice out. Because I am, Pearl argued. You're listening to me, a stupid girl. Why not listen to your parents? They looked like they're willing to explain. But you ran away. I'm not saying this for me, but for yourself. Please, listen to them first. At least, you still have your parents, your family. As for me, I don't have them anymore. Pearl continued her words in her mind. Day 154 to 10:08 p.m. Airspace, Municipality of Badian, Province of Cebu. The dimensional barrier was, once again, damaged. The observer and the eyes were immediately alerted by the situation. There was no need to mention that the damage this time was immense, and the sky was torn for miles. And as the one currently overseeing Southeast Asia, fourth, the Eye of Amusement, was not amused. This was the second time in the span of a few days, furthermore, in the exact same country. With the barrier between the mortal realm and the spirit dimension weakening, it could not be helped that fractures appear every now and then. Even in other places on Earth, many incidents like this happened in the past 2 months. However, it was mostly by accident. The largest fracture so far happened in Oakland, New Jersey, in the United States, after a sealed humanoid chimera finally escaped from his, several thousand years, slumber. The events, however, unfolded in front of one of the eyes. Thus, the fracture was mended before anyone could notice. This time, the fracture was definitely larger than the one in New Jersey. The previous one only spanned across a small village, while the current one basically slashed half across the country. What a headache, Fourth grumbled in frustration. With the planetary debris in space closing onto Earth, they were rushing to find the remaining hidden gods. There were a lot of gods in the past era of Earth, thousands of years ago. Some of them went down in texts and history, while the lesser ones were totally forgotten. Among all of those gods, many did not leave or did not get killed during the time the observer was changed. Due to many factors, many local gods misunderstood the new observer and the eyes. Thus, many gods went into hiding. Even for the observer and the eyes, it would be difficult to find those gods. They were gods, after all. Thus, until now, many of them remained hidden. On the other hand, some managed to stealthily leave the plane in one way or another. Of course, some of them also died. Some were found by the eyes and were killed. Some were killed after losing their powers after the world was returned to its original path. Now, to find the remaining hidden gods, the eyes were doing their best. Time was now limited, unlike before. And yet, Fourth had to deal with this situation. Fourth was all the way in Indonesia when this happened. She was in the middle of tracking traces of a hidden god there, possibly the goddess of lakes, Dwi Dani. In the middle of her search, Fourth had to fly as fast as she could and return to the Philippines. Then, she had to see the sky cracked for miles. She was really annoyed. The worst part, it would take a while to fix this dimension crack if she had to do this alone. And there was no time to do that. Fourth should be looking for the hidden gods to help save the world instead of doing this. Fourth immediately arrived at where the cause of the crack should be. What Fourth saw was a gigantic crocodile standing by the coast like a statue. And, of course, Fourth was shocked to see a gigantic mutated infected crocodile radiating a godly aura. There was no need to think or investigate. This monster was definitely the one behind this mess. Fourth wanted to deal with this problem immediately. The eyes needed to remove this creature before it caused more problems. But before Fourth could make a move, a door of light appeared out of nowhere in front of her. "Don't be so hasty, Fourth." A strict voice entered Fourth's ears as a figure stepped out of the door. 19th. "Why are you stopping me? We need to deal with that creature." Fourth complained with a frown as she gazed at 19th, the eye of interest. "I'm not stopping you for no reason," 19th replied. "Just before you do any rash action, calm down and observe what you are about to attack." "What do you mean?" Fourth's mood dampened down as she realized that she almost made a grave mistake. Thus, Fourth could only look at the gigantic crocodile below with dismay. Except for a few strict occasions, the observer and the eyes could not directly interfere with the world. One of those occasions was when a foreign god wanted to invade or interfere with the world. It happened several times before, and also the reason they had to drive out the foreign gods that inhabited this planet before. At these times, they could deal with the gods and their minions if they denied complying. They also had the authority to deal with traces that could lead to the possible invasion of foreign gods in the future. This rule was the very same reason why blood demons, who were born from the drop of blood of a foreign evil god, had gone extinct due to the machinations of the eyes. It was because their existence could lead to the rebirth of the god they defeated in the past. And this very same rule was what caused 19th to stop Fourth from attacking the gigantic crocodile. True, the gigantic crocodile was emitting a godly aura. Even if it was not a foreign god, it could have a direct relation to them. Thus, the eyes could have dealt with it directly. That was if it was still alive. Unfortunately, the gigantic crocodile was an infected. It had long died with its soul and consciousness popping out of existence like a bubble. And an infected, no matter how dangerous they were considered as earthborns. It was an existence born in the lands of Earth. Thus, the eyes now lost the authority to directly deal with it even if it still had a godly aura as an infected. If Fourth attacked the crocodile just now, she could be subjected to punishment. Luckily, 19th stopped her. "Damn it. What are we going to do? This is not amusing at all. You know, what if it caused the dimensional barrier to crumble further? We don't have a lot of time just to do the repairs." Fourth grumbled in annoyance. "First, it doesn't seem to be keen on doing anything for now," 19th said, assessing the gigantic crocodile. "We can leave it be for a bit and ask our friends below." "Friends?" Fourth was confused as she looked down where 19th was also looking. The three-eyed little girl was frozen stiff. ***. You people again. Just what in the world are you doing? Just why is there always a problem when you all are around? Huh? Fourth immediately threw a tantrum as she landed on the ground. After all, she saw the culprits in the previous incident in Katandwanas being involved here too. "Can you not shout?" Mark yelled back with a frown. "Also, pipe your aura down. We got a sick person here." Mark pointed at Celine, who was already having a hard time breathing just because of Fourth's presence. The others, like Padua and Geronimo, could not help but step back too. Suddenly being scolded was actually effective. By surprise, Fourth followed Mark's words. "Hey, why should I follow you?" Of course, she immediately realized it. "In any case, he is right, Fourth," 19th said, standing behind Fourth. "If this female human died just because you didn't control your aura, you'll definitely receive a scolding from Master." Hearing 19th's reasoning, Fourth could only concede. Stopping her tantrum, she finally got to take a good look at Mark. Peeved. "Ha ha ha. Did you jump into a grill or something?" That was Fourth's reaction, seeing half of Mark's body charred black. Although May had already cleaned his right cheek of the burns, his arm was still far from cleaned properly. His clothes were also burned. You think this is amusing? Mark sighed. Yeah? Fourth replied without hesitation. Seeing that the three-eyed girl would not stop soon from laughing, Mark turned to the more dignified 19th instead. What are your plans regarding that infected monster? And the reply was, nothing. 19th shook her head. No plan at all. And then, she explained the circumstances. So basically, you are saying that you can't deal with it since it's already a new entity and not the one that a god created? Mark summarized. Yes. Nicely put. 19th nodded at Mark's words. But isn't it still a god's creation? Mark asked. After all, it's only the soul that has changed or removed. That is true if we are talking about magical zombies, possession, or transmigration. 19th replied. Unfortunately, we are talking about the thing you call mutagen. Mutagen, you say? Mark could not help but mull, digging the memories inside his subconscious. Mutagen affects its victims genetically, especially for those affected with the unstable pathogen, so-called the infected. Their bodies undergo some restructuring after they mutated. So, it's not the very same body that a god created, is it? Mark said, making 19th nod in agreement. Then, it's up to us inhabitants of Earth to deal with that thing? Mark added, which also received a nod in reply. How can we deal with that? Mark could only ask. Just the heat from an attack that mist turned me into a grilled potato. Peeved. Grilled potato. Ha ha ha. In the background, the three-eyed girl was on another round of laughs. Can you do something about that? Mark complained to 19th. There is nothing I can do about her. That is just how we, existences created by emotions, work. Fourth, as the eye of amusement, found your situation amusingly funny and could not help but laugh it out. It is good for her since she had no way of receiving amusement from humans in these dire times. 19th shrugged helplessly. It was good for Fourth that she found Mark's situation amusingly funny. Although Mark understood, he could not help but feel slightly conflicted. Before anything else, can you tell me what happened first? 19th asked Mark as she could not see his information from her book. Since it was not hard to do, Mark explained without hesitation. I see. So it just happened to appear here attracted by the battle. Then it attacked you when you tried to get close to it to investigate. Furthermore, it attacked without actually seeing you, is that right? That attack was the cause of the fracture. At Ninetith's affirmation, Mark nodded. So, it's all an accident, huh? Fourth, who finished laughing, joined in. I thought you caused it directly like the previous one. What are you talking about? Mark frowned at Fourth. I didn't cause the previous one either. It's the aftermath of your war with those island demons. Fourth argued. That is the same as you causing it directly. With that, Mark could not argue back and turned to 19th. Then, we can only leave that monster alone for the meantime and you eyes will repair the fracture? Mark asked. That is the only thing we can do, unfortunately. 19th helplessly sighed. It would be a different thing if we had his creator around. Mark stared at 19th, asking her to elaborate further. 19th then turned to the silhouette of the crocodile at the coast. You all can feel it, right? The unrestrained godly aura. It is actually not because it is releasing it on purpose or did not know how to control it. It felt more like its godly aura is leaking. A god's magical powers are theirs alone and would not leak. For it to leak like that, meant that the godly energy it had in its body did not belong to it at all, and it is experiencing some sort of rejection. It probably got that godly energy from an external source. Besides, even if Sonogo is a messenger of Kaptan, it is very unlikely for a messenger to be bestowed with such power. The seal. Mark blurted out, remembering the myth. That is probably right. 19th agreed. Previous instances showed that the infected are attracted and can absorb magical energies to mutate. It likely is one of those circumstances. If Kaptan is with us, he should be able to extract his own magical energy from the body of that creature. Godly energies are unique to their owners, after all. So, we needed the sky god Kaptan to kill that thing. Mark murmured. Can we just look for a needle in a haystack instead? At Mark's words, even 4th and 19th agreed. Finding gods that hid themselves were much harder, even comparing to finding a grain of rice in a bucket of sand. But then, Pephile, who was listening silently all this time and carefully holding Selene, spoke. What about the goddess Magwayan? She always goes side by side with sky god Kopton. Those words from Pephile could not help but put him in the center of attention. Day 154 to 10:15 p.m., Mountain Area, Municipality of Badian, Province of Cebu. With Pephile suddenly joining into the conversation, the attention became focused on him. As a Tamawo, it would not be surprising if Pephile mentioned Magwayan, the Visayan goddess of the sea and the supposed creator of their race. However, he said her name at this time. It meant that he might hold some clues or information about her. It would be crucial at this time, since if they could find Magwayan, they would likely find clues about Kopton. In Visayan myths, the god of the sky, Kopton, and the goddess of the sea, Magwayan, were connected in different ways. The two gods were said to be counterparts. One ruled the bright sky while the other ruled the dark deep oceans. The two were also believed to have contradicting personalities. These things led to the belief in the existence of the two to maintain balance in early Visayan faiths. Magwayan was also believed to ferry the souls of the dead to the underworld, thus also making her the goddess of death and underworld, while Kopton was also deemed the god of skyworld. However, there was not only one story that depicted the connection between the two. Ancient Cebuanos pictured them to be husband and wife. The two quarreled, causing the goddess of the sea to leave and return to the sea. In Negrense myths, they were believed to be rivals contesting who would inherit the world that the supreme ruler, Conlan, made. It was until the children of the two, the god of the wind, Lihangan, and the second goddess of the sea, Litigat, fell in love with each other. The marriage of the two ended the war between the inheritance and also caused the birth of four deities, Lacalabutan, Liadla, Libulan, and the only female, Lasuga. There was even another folklore that deemed both Kopton and Magwayan to be both males. Nonetheless, there was one thing that was similar to all these stories. None of these myths ended happily. The starts might be different, but it all converged to the attack of the three grandsons of Kopton, who all stormed the kingdom in the sky, Kahilwayan, and destroyed its gates. The three intended to usurp the sky god's throne, with Lacalabutan being the leader of the attack. In anger, Kopton sent bolts of lightning which killed the three instantly. Both Liadla and Libulan turned into balls energy while the ringleader of the attack, Lacalabutan, his body made of rock, crumbled into pieces. The innocent Lasuga visited her grandfather after the incident. She was unaware of events. Kopton, blinded by anger, also struck her with lightning, breaking her body into thousands of pieces. This myth led to the creation of the sun, moon, and stars, as believed by the ancient Visayan people. And soon following the myth of creation after Magwayan planted a bamboo, where the first man and woman of the Philippines came from. With these various myths, the connection between Kopton and Magwayan could not be denied. Are you saying that you have a way to find Magwayan? Fourth immediately asked Pephile. If she could find another god within her territory, she would be happy. Not to mention that finding Magwayan could also lead to finding Kopton. It meant that she could possibly find two gods in one go. Pephile was overwhelmed by the sudden enthusiasm of Fourth, whose aura suddenly burst forth. Selene, who Pephile was carrying, could not handle it anymore and fainted. Selene. Pephile could not help but panic. Sorry. Fourth's enthusiasm died down after seeing what happened. Even 19th was glaring at her for her carelessness. Let me see. 19th approached Pephile to check on Selene. Pephile wanted to back down. However, there was really nothing he could do in this situation. Besides, unlike Fourth, 19th was properly reigning in her aura. 19th placed her right hand on Selene's forehead and solemnly examined her body. Then, she conjured a thin book in her hand, and the book automatically flipped its pages. The book's pages were empty but were suddenly filled with words. What a pitiful human! 19th could not help but remark, reading Celine's history from the book. She had not seen the sun for several years. She is not malnourished, but she severely lacked what humans called vitamin D. Her deficiency in that vitamin caused her muscles to grow weak. 19th then pressed her thumb on Celine's forehead, causing her body to slightly glow for a few seconds. She then turned to Pephile. It's not a treatment, but it will allow her to recover faster. You should take care of your wife more and let her bask in the sun. Hearing those words, Pephile was moved. Celine's condition bothered him too much, and with the current state of the world, there would be no hospital to check her state properly. Thank you, Pephile said wholeheartedly. Don't thank me, 19th replied. If you could really give information that could lead us to other hidden gods, it would be just a small reward. You should place her down first, Mark said as he told May to take out a folding bed from her ring. After Pephile put Celine down, he was now free to talk. Actually, it's not a piece of solid information, is that fine? Pephile asked. It's fine. Even if it's just hearsays and a drunkard's rambling, we can't be picky at all. Fourth said. Then, I'll start. Pephile nodded. Our race is created by goddess Magwayan, or at least, the first Tamawas. But the incident out our race overusing the magical powers happened. She came back and put a curse on our race. But she did not only do that. Through a certain artifact, the goddess kept in contact with the race once a century and would always bestow her grace to the new king to inherit the throne and lead our tribe. Furthermore, the artifact was said to be the one to choose the next king by the goddess standards. We call that artifact the Mark of the King, Pephile added. If you had such a concrete explanation, why did you say that it is not a piece of solid information? 19th could not help but ask. Actually, no one had seen it work at all aside from the king that triggered the artifact. At most, other Tamawas saw the artifact shine and pulsate. But that was it. I don't even know if my father, the previous king, actually conversed with the goddess. So, it is more like a rumor within the tribe. So, the contact should probably be done in private, Mark spoke. It's not surprising. If it was done publicly, she would have been long found by the eyes. Then, where is this artifact? Fourth asked impatiently. It should be within the tribe. It was always sealed in a chamber where only the current king could enter. Pephile replied. It looks like we will have to visit your tribe after you caused chaos within it. 19th said. How did you? Pephile was surprised at first, but he remembered. Is it also recorded with the book? Pephile's eyes fell on the book created after 19th touched Celine's forehead. It is. 19th smiled. Though I'm surprised that a realm of your race existed. It is not within my records. It is very likely the work of your goddess that stopped us from detecting it. As it appeared, your goddess really loved her creations and let your tribe live within a sub-realm inside the mortal dimension. Their race is something that relied on humans to continue on, Mark spoke. If their race were also thrown into the spirit dimension, they could only last a few hundred years before getting extinct. That is true. 19th agreed. Anyway, let's go. Fourth yelled out loud. We need to get that artifact. Can you wait a bit? Mark interjected on the three-eyed girl's enthusiasm. I want to go too, but we are not done here yet. They could only turn at Mark, who was still in the middle of healing his scorched burns. Your regeneration slowed down. 19th noticed. It's not surprising. You got scorched by energy belonging to the god of the sky. Gods like him are the bane of people like you who had the thick blood of an evil god. Huh? With 19th's words, some people around listening were frozen. After all, not everyone in Mark's current group was in the know of the situation. Especially for Barak, who was a user of magic. It was a very shocking piece of information. Do you really have to say that out loud? Mark complained with a frown. Is something wrong? 19th smiled. I believe that it would just be a matter of time. Besides, there should be nothing wrong with people you trust to know about it. We need as much help that we can get when that time came. Mark fell silent. The deal with him and the eyes, it could only be a matter of time. Okay, we'll wait, Fourth said begrudgingly as she turned to 19th. Should we fix that fracture first while waiting? We can't leave it for too long. We? 19th tilted her head. I believe that it is your duty to fix that. Hey. Fourth pouted. That fracture is too large. It will take me half a day to close that alone. Huh. 19th sighed. All right. I'll help. I'll also request Master to ask help from the others. Fourth could not help but smile as 19th agreed to help her. 19th then turned to Mark. We will fix the fracture first. It would be a bad situation if minor assimilation occurred before the intended time. With those words, the two eyes left Mark's group temporarily. It was when Mark was swarmed with questions from the others. Boss, are you a descendant of an evil god? No wonder you're too powerful. Barak voiced out curiously. Huh? Mark sighed. I'm not. She only said that I have the blood of an evil god. It doesn't necessarily mean that I'm a descendant of one. I see. Barak nodded. Still, he was pretty excited knowing that the person that recruited him was not just some powerful demon. To the side, Emika was silently staring at Mark with glittering eyes. The latter could only ignore the green-haired girl. It was when Emihan spoke to Mark. Master, isn't our goal here only to retrieve Baphile's wife? I believe that it's not necessary for us to fight that monster since we already achieved our goal. That question made the others agree. After all, it was clear that Mark almost died just by one attack of that creature. Yet, here he was, wanting to deal with that creature. None of them here had the courage to face such a creature. Comparing them to a godly existence was like comparing an ant to a whale. You're right about that. We can just leave already, Mark replied. But don't think that it's unnecessary for us to fight that. Remember that it's an infected. Moreover, one that mutated by absorbing the magical energy of a god. If we leave it alone, it will get stronger and stronger. Soon, it could turn into something that could sink the whole country, or worse, the whole world. We need to deal with that now that it is still weaker. Especially since we can get help right now. Mark then turned to the direction that the two eyes flew towards. After the second wave, the gods would not be able to stay in this world anymore. We will have fewer cards to play to deal with that thing. Not to mention that it will definitely get stronger. Those words from Mark made everyone realize how urgent it was to kill that gigantic crocodile. They had not thought about the things Mark mentioned. As for Mark, he had a different reason for thinking that way. With Freed's memories clear in his mind, he remembered the origin of the monster that destroyed Arielis. It was a monster that was left alone because no one was able to deal with it. Freed's group left it, thinking that they could become stronger in the future and would be able to deal with that creature. However, reality betrayed them. That very creature grew faster than they imagined and became the cause of their planet's destruction. Mark did not want to make the same mistake, though for the most part. Mark just wanted to see what kind of mental crystal and mutagen stone could he get from that monster. Day 154 to 10:31 p.m., Mountain Area, Municipality of Badian, Province of Cebu. Gazing at the sky, everyone could see the dimensional crack slowly mend. Ordinary humans could not see it, but many figures currently worked as fast as possible to fix the problem. Right now, it was not only Fourth, the Eye of Amusement, and 19th, the Eye of Interest, were present. Aside from the two, there were basketball-sized creatures donned with tentacles flying about near the crack. As Fourth had said before, they called for reinforcements. These ball-like creatures were, actually, floating eyeballs, known as the lesser eyes called scouts. The members of Mark's group present during the attack of the infected Bungasingis in the spirit dimension remembered these creatures. Small they might be, but their prowess could not be underestimated. Apparently, these scouts were under 19th's control. It was also why, among the eyes, she was the most knowledgeable about things. This was also the reason Fourth earnestly asked for her help, since if 19th did not, This huge dimension crack would be all for Fourth to fix alone. The scouts aside, there were another 2 eyes present to help. Looking at the eye, Mark could not help but wonder what he was doing here. The first one was a boy. The eye that barely had any existence, the eye of boredom, 9th. It looked like he came to help all the way from East America. On the other hand, the other eye was another little girl. This was the first time Mark had seen her, but as it appeared to be, she seemed to have a close relationship with both 4th and 9th. The 4 eyes worked on the dimension crack together with the scouts, but it looked like that they would still need some time to fully fix it. While waiting, Pephile was taking care of Celine while being worried about his son. Edsel and Pearl haven't returned yet, Pephile said as he looked in the direction the two ran to. Don't worry, they're not too far from here. Let Edsel think it out first. The situation is a huge shock to him. Mark told Pephile, detecting Edsel and Pearl staying in one place. Boss, isn't it better if Sir Pephile told Edsel beforehand? To the side, Padua could not help but ask. That would cause a situation worse than this. Mark shook his head. Imagine you're Edsel, who lived his life since he was 5 without any parents. You don't know who your father is, and your mother died of sickness long ago. Then a strange man that did not look human suddenly appeared and said, "He is your father, and your dead mother is still alive. How will you react?" Ah. Padua pictured what Mark said and realized. I'll think that the man is a freak and will feel angry for trying to desecrate my mother's memory. Yes, and it will be unbelievable. Especially since there is no evidence that your mother is actually alive, unlike now where Edsel saw his mother. Everyone understood what Mark was saying, and even though Edsel's reaction was negative, it was a better option. Ah! Master, look! Emihan exclaimed, pointing at the shore. Everyone could not help but look in the direction she pointed at. What everyone saw was the gigantic crocodile opening its huge mouth with its lower jaw submerged underwater. And then, as the water from the tsunami returned, all debris the water carried were sucked into the monster's mouth. It's eating. Mark said. The giant crocodile was sucking everything. It did not matter whether it was floating debris or other things. But, of course, its aim was the corpses of living beings swallowed by the tsunami. It was the very same disaster that happened in Loloan settlement. Ah! Suddenly, a loud scream was heard. It came from where the slaves of the Tamawas were left to rest for a while. Mark could only shake his head. It was the same for Pephile. That scream came from one of the victims of Tervil's charm magic. The charm magic was not permanent. Once the caster of the spell died, the charm magic would be dispelled. It would be fine if the woman had been under its effects for too long. Because they had been under its effects for a long time, it would be hard to reverse its effects even if the magic was already dispelled. However, it was different if the woman was only affected by the magic for a short time. The Tamawa's charm magic would not affect the woman's memories. It only affected their emotions. Thus, a woman under the effect of charm magic would still remember everything even after the magic was dispelled. And with how the victims of Tervil were treated, now that they were freed from his magic, they began to suffer mental problems. These charmed women became playthings for the male slaves. It was something that was confirmed before. But why did that happen? What was Tervil's reason for doing that? Unexpectedly, Tervil's reason was noble, at least, for their tribe. Tamawas were reliant on human women to continue their race. However, with the apocalypse happening, the number of humans were drastically decreased. If all humans were killed, the race of Tamawas would soon follow extinction. Thus, with Tervil's anomalous charm magic, he decided to breed humans. And, of course, very few men among the slaves would decline such an offer. Now that Tervil died, all those female slaves remembered how they became tools for human breeding. The nights when they were used, unable to resist and even loving the deed. It was all fresh in their minds. Something like that would cause trauma and mental breakdowns for the poor women. Can't we do anything for them? Geronimo voiced out his concern. Even though he was already part of Mark's group, he was still a brave soldier. Someone who protected the weak. It was heartbreaking for him to see such a scene. Everyone fell silent. There was nothing they could do to help. Well, there was someone who could. Unfortunately, Mark had no intention to. About an hour passed, and the crack in the sky was still far from being fixed. Mark estimated that the eyes fixed barely past half of the fracture. In the least, it was much faster than Forth's complaints before. Still, for it to take this long, it meant that the prowess of that beam from the giant crocodile was extremely powerful. At this time, Mark was already in top shape once more. May was already done carefully removing his burnt skin from his body. He also changed clothes as his previous one was already torn and burnt. "Looks like it's leaving already," Mark said, looking at the shore. The giant crocodile was already done eating. As it could not find any corpses in the water any longer, it began to retreat back underwater. "Uncle, is it fine to let that leave?" Emika asked. "There's nothing we can to make that stay, anyway." Mark shrugged. "Besides, it probably won't leave the strait anyway. We can just lure it out again if we already have a way to deal with it." Everyone agreed to Mark's words. There was really nothing they could do but watch it leave. Mark looked at the sky once more. The eyes were still doing their best to fix the fracture as fast as they could. "Boss," Padua called out, looking at the same scene as Mark. "From what I learned since we joined your group, our world and the spirit dimension will fuse soon, right? Why bother fixing it? Shouldn't they just leave it alone?" It was a good question. Actually, Mark was also wondering about that. It's because the fusion of the two dimensions is not something simple. Suddenly, a voice was heard by them, answering a bit of Padua's question. No one noticed, but another person was already sitting near them while they talked. Not even Mark. No, it was not that Mark could not detect the person. It was just that Mark relied on mental and emotional fluctuations to detect people. But the person that spoke barely had fluctuations. It was not there was none, but it was just too calm for Mark to detect immediately. After hearing the voice, Abigail could not help but jump from her seat. It was because the person was actually sitting beside her. Running away from the stranger, she hid behind Mark. Everyone turned to the newcomer, and to say, they were surprised. "Good evening, everyone." The person greeted the group before turning to Mark. "You must be Forth's candidate, am I right? Nice to meet you. You can call me Eighth. I believe you already know what emotion I represent from your look." "The eye of calmness, is it?" Mark replied with a frown. "Do you need anything from us?" Of course, Mark was wary. After all, instead of appearing to help Forth, the person was here among his group instead. Looking at Eighth, he had an appearance of a man in his late 40s. If there was a word to describe his appearance, it was classy. He looked like a nobleman from the past, complete with a brown coat, a cane, and even a top hat. If not for his two pairs of eyes, he would look like a time traveler from the past. "You don't need to be wary." Eighth smiled gently. "I just appeared here since I detected a person with strong calmness among your group." The others were confused and could only turn to Mark and Pephile. After all, among everyone here, the two were the most expressionless and calm. But, of course, it was not the two. Mark knew that this eye called Eighth was talking about Abigail. Eighth then looked at the sky. "Like the others, I just came here to fix the fracture." Eighth then turned to Padua. "But since I heard an interesting question, I can answer it for you all." Then, Eighth turned to Mark once again. "If you will allow me. After all, it seemed that you made your own preparations for the fusion. I heard everything from Forth, even your theory for the spirit dimension being the copy of the mortal world and its effects during the fusion." Mark did not reply, but his silence was already more of consent as Eighth saw. The spirit dimension is a copy of the mortal world. That is true. However, that was several thousand years ago. Since the time it was created, its changes have already strayed away from its original copy. Erosion, the fauna, the creatures, many factors contributed to the changes. Thus, while things that exist in both dimensions will merge, things that did exist in both dimensions was very few. Thus, when the two dimensions merged, it is expected that the whole world will collapse. These words stirred Mark's group. It just meant that Mark's preparations around the base were useless. And once the dimensions merged, there was a huge possibility that the mountain where their base was built would end up collapsing. After all, two mountains existing in a single place would cause the volume to overflow, destroying the two mountains in the process. And this scenario would not only apply to their base but everywhere on Earth. That is why we are trying to prevent even a small dimensional fusion until the day our master designated. During the time that planetary debris would hit Earth, is it? Mark voiced out, making Eighth nod. At that time, we will rely on the help of the remaining gods to destroy it. Still, the impact will tear the dimensional barrier apart. At that time, it is our duty to protect Earth and its structure from collapsing completely. We can only do it once. Eighth added. That is why the dimension fusion can't happen earlier or later. Is it fine for you to tell us this? Mark asked. Ho ho. Eighth laughed. There is no need to worry. Remember that you already had a deal with us for the future. You are entitled to our support, although it's mostly for small things. Well, then. If you will excuse me. With that sentence, Eighth stood and flew towards the other eyes. He did not even wait for any other inquiry from Mark's group. In any case, the question was answered properly. No wonder now why Fourth was too frantic about the fracture. Ending the short conversation with another eye, another hour passed. With Eighth joining the repairs of the fracture, their speed accelerated further. Finally, the fracture was fixed and the eyes returned to Mark's group. Day 155 to 12:32 a.m. Mountain area, Municipality of Badian, Province of Cebu. It was already past midnight. Even if the eyes were godly beings and there were already 5 of them present, it took them more than 2 hours to repair the fracture. It was proof of how immense the damage caused by a single attack of the infected Sonogo was. This scene also made Mark's group scale the difference between the strength of an early deity and a servant of a god. In Catanduanes, Lord Cease nearly stepped into deityhood. The energy he released also caused fractures within the dimensional barrier. Yet, Fourth only needed a few minutes to fix the damage. Yet, it took 2 hours for 5 eyes to fix the fracture this time. Not to mention the large number of scouts that 19th called to help. It showed that the strength of the Lord Cease and the infected Sonogo were incomparable. By the time the eyes returned, their attention became focused on Mark, especially 4th and 19th. Seriously, what an absurd regenerative ability. 4th complained, looking at Mark. It would be understandable if you're a being with a body constructed by magical energy, but you're a mortal with a physical body. So, he's your candidate, huh? The unfamiliar eye excitedly exclaimed. I found him first, though. 9th interjected with a bored expression. It doesn't matter who found him first. 9th's words made 4th agitated. He was living within my area even before you found him. It just happened that he's in your area when he met the criterion. I know. 9th shrugged. It's not like I'm claiming him. I'm just saying that I found him first. Grr. 4th glared at 9th while audibly growling. Can you not talk about someone in front of the person? At this time, Mark interjected with a glare. Also, stop making loud noises. At Mark's words, the eyes could only turn to the adorable creature sleeping while in Mark's embrace. With her head rested on her papa's shoulder, Abigail was soundly asleep. It was not surprising. It was already past midnight, after all. Even Iola and Amika were about to doze off if the eyes had not returned yet. The only one that was staying strong was Miracle, who did not need to sleep at all. Hearing Mark speak like that, the unfamiliar eye turned to 4th. It's as you said, he really doesn't fear us, huh? The little girl said with an excited look. It's not that he does not fear us, he is just incapable of feeling it. 19th corrected the little girl's assumption. Is that so? The little girl cutely tilted her head, then she realized that Mark's group was sizing her up. Why won't you introduce yourself first? The Eye of Calmness, 8, suggested. Ah, right. the little girl replied as she excitedly skipped forward. The girl looked about the same age as Fourth's appearance. However, she had a Heim haircut, not to mention the traditional Japanese kimono she was wearing. She looked like a young priestess from a temple. Among the eyes, however, she appeared to be a bit different. Instead of having extra eyes on her face, it was her pupils that had extra instead. Her eyes had 3 pupils each, forming a triangle. I'm 16th. The eye of excitement, let's get along. 16th loudly introduced herself. However, what returned was Mark's fierce glare. Her voice just now almost woke up Abigail. Gay. 16th turned back to the others. He's angry. Because you're too loud, 9th said with a shrug. Do all of you have such exaggerated personalities? Mark asked. 2 girls high on caffeine, a sleepy boy, and an old guy popping out of nowhere. So far, only 19th had shown proper behavior. Mark's complaint sure stabbed the eyes savagely. However, what was noticeable was the 4 of them strangely looking at 19th. 19th is proper? 4th blurted out at Mark. Among us eyes, she's the most twisted, you know? 4th then turned to the others. Right? However, no one replied to 4th. The old man, 8, turned his head away. Even the other 2 were frozen stiff. That was when 4th felt cold behind her. Just what do you think you were saying? The cold feeling definitely came from 19th that was now creeping behind 4th. 4th was not wrong, however. Among the emotions in existence, interest hovered between both positive and negative. Depending on the purity and intensity of one's interest in things, it could turn either good or bad. Pure interest could turn into passion or even love. Unpure interest, on the other hand, could turn into obsession and greed. Interest was such an unstable emotion, not to mention that it could give birth to other emotions. That was why among the eyes, it was unmistakable that she was the most powerful and the most unstable. I already know that. Mark suddenly spoke to 4th, and I said, she's the only one that behaved properly, nothing else. Who? 4th fell silent, unable to refute Mark. 19th, on the other hand, retracted her cold chilling aura at the unexpected compliment. So, are we going or not? Mark shifted the topic. After all, they still had things to do. Ah, right. We still need to follow that Tamuo's information. 4th exclaimed as she turned to Pephile. Then, I will be going back. The old man, 8, said. Much like 4th, I'm also searching for gods in my area. Me too. 9th added with a yawn. I need to put more effort in searching since my area barely had any gods in existence. 9th surely was complaining. It was not surprising. Although the eastern side of North America had a lot of myths and folklore about mythical creatures and cryptids, the stories of gods there were severely lacking. It was as if the gods that existed and ruled over America did not leave many traces behind after they left or went hiding. I'm joining. 16th raised her hand, wanting to join. No, but 19th swatted the little girl's enthusiasm right away. Go back to your territory and try to find if there are other gods that we haven't found yet. Being ordered like that, 16th pouted. Nonetheless, she did not argue. With that, the 3 eyes left in different ways. 8's a figure flashed and vanished without a sound or even a ripple in the air. 9th just faded out of existence. Lastly, 16th, who glowed with a bright light before vanishing. In an instant, it was just 4th and 19th who were left. As the eyes were ready to go, Mark gently handed the sleeping Abigail to May. Just stay here and set up camp, Mark told May. Contact me through the ring if something happens. Yes. May nodded as Mark patted her head. Mark then turned to Pephile. Let's go. At this time, only Mark and Pephile would be going with the 2 eyes. It was not surprising since not everyone could handle standing side by side between the 2 godly beings. Even Pephile did not want to. After all, he also wanted to take care of Celine. However, only Pephile could serve as a guide, this time. Thus, Pephile had no choice but go. Don't worry, I'll guard Mother. As Pephile looked at Celine, Edzel's voice sounded. Edzel returned with Pearl after 2 hours of clearing his mind. Pephile was about to speak, but Edzel raised his hand to stop the former. I'm not ready to hear your reasons yet, leave it for later, just go. Pephile could not help but feel downhearted, however, it was better than before. Edzel did not say that he would not listen. This kind of drama is pretty amusing itself. Fourth could not help but murmur. Close your mouth, Fourth, only to get reprimanded by 19th. Barak. Mark turned to Barak and the 2 soldiers. What is it? The slaves of the Tamawas. Can you send them off? Mark replied. I don't really plan on taking them with us, but leaving them here would be bad. Send them to the survivors from the school that went up the mountain. Just don't startle them with your summons. No problem, boss. Barak nodded. I will get it done before you return. And with that, 4 individuals left the group to follow the clues that Pephile had. ******* Day 155 to 12:40 a.m. King's Chambers, Tamawo Ancestral Tribe, Municipality of Badian, Province of Cebu. Do not worry about emptying the storage. Use as many herbs as needed to treat the wounded. The voice of Elkyle, the shaman of the Tamawas, echoed within the almost ruined castle. The tribe was in left chaos after the events that transpired a few hours ago. Many warriors died, and there were more who were wounded. Much worse, their king, Artile, was unconscious. Since their king had banished all the elders in the tribe, managing this chaos was left in the hands of Elkyle. As the tribe's shaman, he had authority just a step below an elder of the tribe. There were even circumstances where a shaman's decision was prioritized over the elders. As such, the Tamawas and other residents within the tribe obeyed Elkyle's words without question during the absence of their king. However, Elkyle was at a loss. After giving out his orders to treat the wounded, Elkyle entered their king's chambers. The chamber was a mess, with its walls tilted and the floor uneven. The whole place was built using the sacred tree's trunk. As such, no one expected that their castle would turn out like this. Inside the chamber, Artile laid on his bed, unconscious. No one was allowed in this chamber aside from the king and the shaman. Especially in this situation where the consequences of Artile's defeat began to show. Being a direct descendant of the tribe's royal family, Artile inherited a more handsome face than most people of their tribe. His silver hair and pale-colored eyes had an unusual luster. Every Tamawa with royal blood had these features, including the first prince, Pephile. But now, Artile began to lose his shine. Artile was defeated in a fight and lost the right to claim the woman he fell in love with. As such, the curse began to kick in. The luster of Artile's hair began to fade. Some of his hair even began to fall off. His smooth skin started to wrinkle, and his lips began to crack. After some time passed, it was expected that Artile would become weakened, further and further. It was until he breathed his last. Sometimes, Tamawas thought that it was better not to fall in love at all. There was even a rule that one should not show their woman to those who had no partners to prevent this kind of thing from happening. But no one would be able to stop fate. Artile fell in love with his brother's woman and lost. That was just how it was to be. With a sigh, Elkyle walked out of the king's chamber. Outside, a messenger was waiting to give a report. "What is it now?" Elkyle asked. "Another child was killed." The messenger reported. Elkyle could only shake his head. Some of the women, the wives of the warriors that died, began killing their children after the charm magic was dispelled. It was an inevitable event, especially for women who were kidnapped from their human families to become the wife of a Tamawa. What a mess! Elkyle dragged his staff, murmuring about the problems. Sooner or later, their tribe would face their inevitable demise. But then, as if another bucket of water was poured unto him, another messenger burst into the castle in panic. "Shaman! Shaman!" The messenger called loudly. "Don't shout within the halls of the castle." Elkyle could not help but reprimand the messenger. "I know, Shaman. But this is urgent. The messenger did not wait for permission and spoke. The first prince returned, and he brought the eyes with him. Elkyle was frozen in both anger and fear. Damn that Pephile! Is defeating the king and getting his woman back not enough? Is he this keen on destroying the tribe? Elkyle then stormed out of the castle to meet Pephile. The eyes might be fearful existences. However, there was no way he would just stand and watch while their tribe faced destruction. Day 155 to 12:58 a.m. River Valley, Municipality of Badian, Province of Cebu. Leaving the group, Mark, Pephile, 4th, and 19th moved towards the location of the tribe of Tamawas. Since none of them wanted to waste time, all of them moved as fast as they could. And to say, Mark could not help but feel the difference in his and I's strength. Pephile was also frustrated. He could cover a long distance quickly with his ability to travel through trees within a certain distance. Yet, both 4th and 19th were always on his tail. Even Mark, who was using his shadow mist movement, appearing and disappearing now and then, was the same. It was not like they were in a race against each other. However, both Mark and Pephile could tell that the two eyes were holding back to match their speed. With their speed, it did not take long to arrive at one of the entrances of the Tamawos realm. The border was a pair of curved trees planted right beside the top of the cliff. Suspecting humans would only feel that the trees were strange. As for Mark's group, they knew that it was something magical. Nonetheless, even if the pair of trees were eye-catching, no regular human would be able to see it. It was because the area was cast with magic that would make humans lost without a guide. With Pephile's lead, they walked past through the middle of the trees. They were supposed to fall since it was a cliff in front of them. But upon passing through, instead of a cliff, they stepped on a bridge made of roots and vines. To think that there's a realm hidden here, 19th could not help but murmur as she looked around. It's a realm crafted by a god. It's no surprise that it managed to avoid our sight. 4th said in reply to 19th's words, "Woom." Suddenly, a pulse of magical energy enveloped the entrance as if something detected their arrival. Ward magic, Pephile spoke with a frown. Barak already broke the previous one. It looks like they cast another after we left. Following the pulse from the ward magic, Mark detected many individuals approaching their location. But then, something strange happened. Some of the Tamawos' attention was immediately focused on 4th and 19th. It was strange considering that the existence of the eyes was not really known to many. Then, upon seeing 4th and 19th's faces, the Tamawas retreated. It would not be surprising if they went and tried to stop them. However, the Tamawas actually fled. It was as if they knew the eyes. Pephile? Mark turned to Pephile. You and your tribe knew about the eyes? Don't ask me, Pephile replied. I don't know either. I might have heard about your race but not the eyes until we met Bathala. It was really strange. Perhaps, something happened during the years you left your tribe. 19th spoke, remembering the details of the book about Selene. Those words made Pephile silent. After all, he had no way to confirm it. Thinking is just a waste of time, 4th yelled. Let's just go and ask them. Of course, the eyes would be interested in this. After all, their existence was not supposed to be known until now. Although they were the ones that administrated the relocation of magical creatures to the spirit dimension, they erased everything that could reveal their existence, including memories of people and creatures. Only the gods and deities of the past should know about the eyes, since even the eyes would not be able to easily erase the memories of such godly beings. Being urged by 4th, Pephile immediately led them to the castle at the center of the realm. And, sure enough, Mark's group was blocked by Tamawas. Pephile. Are you out of your mind? How dare you bring the eyes to our tribe? Do you want to destroy the tribe too badly? You already got Selene back. The king would also not last too long. Is it not enough? A Tamawo roared in fury. It was the current shaman of the Tamawas, Elkyle. So, you are blaming me for this? Pephile surely was annoyed. By how Elkyle spoke, it was as if everything was his fault. I left the tribe, leaving my position as the heir to Artile. Yet, none of you were content about that. You all tracked me all the way to the other side of the country. Then, with the help of all of you, Artile took away Selene. Think about it. If you all just left me alone with my family in that place. Will this happen? Elkyle was unable to refute. It was Artile that was too greedy about getting recognized as the king. If they did not track Pephile, Artile would not fall in love with Selene. And the tribe would not face the current grave situation. All of you brought this unto yourselves, Pephile added. Besides, we are not here to destroy the tribe. Just get out of the way if you really didn't want that to happen. As if I will believe you, Elkyle roared. Believe my words or not, there is nothing you all can do anyway. Though I wonder, how the hell did all of you know about the eyes? Pephile asked. There is no need to ask. Suddenly, 19th spoke. I'll take a more detailed information from him directly. And without warning, 19th's body blurred. Before anyone could react, there she was, lifting the shaman by grabbing on his neck. The shaman flailed, trying to resist. He even tried some of the magic he knew to escape 19th's grasp. But all of it was for naught. 19th's right hand grabbed on Elkyle's neck like a steel clamp. A book then appeared on 19th's left hand. Surely, it was the book that would state everything about Elkyle. Getting what she wanted, 19th was done with Elkyle. Without any change in her expression, she threw the shaman towards the Tamawas blocking their way. And Elkyle lost consciousness. It was not like Elkyle was weak. It was 19th that did not hold back at all. Even those Tamawas that tried to catch Elkyle ended up with grave injuries like broken arms and crushed ribcages. That show of prowess caused the remaining Tamawas to step back in fear. See that? Fourth spoke to Mark. I told you she's the most twisted among us. You're saying bad things about me again, huh? Fourth could not help but flinch. 19th was already back and was standing behind her. Is it fine for you to do that? Mark asked 19th. I remember you saying about not harming Earthborns, right? That is usually the case. 19th nodded, but then she let out an unsettling smile. But currently, we are doing our job to find a hidden god. Anything that tries to get in our way of doing our job is subject to elimination even if that person is a human. Mark could only shrug. It was their job protocol, but then, Pephile interjected. Please, don't eliminate them. Disabling them should be enough to get them out of the way, right? It made 19th quite surprised. You want to spare them even after what they did to you. But at the question, Pephile turned to the Tamawas with his eyes filled with fury. No, I'm not sparing them. My brother will die soon. The human population also lessened because of the outbreak. This tribe is already moving towards destruction, at the very least, disbandment. When the tribe disbands, they will need to leave this place. With the situation outside, they will likely die. It would be mercy if we kill them now without them being able to witness how the tribe ends. A cruel fate. It was what this tribe awaits. It was all because they chased after Pephile. At Pephile's reasoning, Mark and the two eyes agreed. It would be an easy way out if they were killed right now. Then, I'll disable them. Mark volunteered while looking at the two eyes. Your auras could stop them but will also affect me and Pephile. It might also end up destroying this realm. So, I'll do it. If you say so. As you wish. The two eyes agreed to Mark. The Tamawas around were already getting ready to fight, even if the shaman was unconscious and some warriors were injured. But before they could make a move, an unsettling pressure fell on their bodies. Mark released his emotion induction, forcing the Tamawas to be enveloped with fear, anxiety, and horror. Their bodies froze, with their legs shaking fiercely. Their view of Mark's group changed. It was as if they were looking at a group of monsters. Pephile, lead the way. Mark told Pephile with his eyes brightly glowing red. Pephile nodded and led the group into the castle under the watch of all the Tamawas gathered here. None of them could stop the four. They were powerless against the group of the first prince. Who would have thought that the first prince would end up with such powerful backing? If he became the king instead, would the end had been different? Unfortunately, it was too late. They all supported the wrong prince to become the king. And now, it was their fate to face destruction. Even if they regret it now, it was useless. Mark's group entered the castle. The sight was interesting as the whole castle was made from a set of gigantic trees. If not for the fact that the whole castle was now a mess after Pephile controlled the trees, the place might have looked beautiful. While walking, 19th was reading the book she extracted from Elkyle. She could not help but frown. It looks like a demon spirit gave away our existence. That demon possessed a Tamawo called Turvil and used him to relay the information. But it seemed that none of the Tamawas knew about the demon spirit. They just believed the possessed person. 19th spoke, summarizing the information. On the other hand, Mark and Pephile could not help stop on their steps. Is there something wrong? 19th asked the two. Did you say Turvil? Pephile replied first. He's my nemesis. As far as I know, he's the one that urged my brother to rebel against the elders. He's also behind most of the mess the tribe is facing. You're probably talking about that tall Tamawo, right? Mark spoke next. I already killed the demon possessing him. The possessed guy should be dead too. What is that demon called? I don't think that it's just any demon for it to know about us. Fourth asked. It's Teray. 19th replied to Fourth. If I am correct, you're the one in charge of that demon. Huh. That earth demon deity? Fourth was surprised. He's a pretty troublesome one. His body and spirit are two separate beings, so he's hard to kill. He managed to escape me several times in the past before he just vanished without a trace. Who would have thought that he's hiding here? Fourth then turned to Mark. You managed to kill that guy. Good job. If I had more authority, I might have given you a reward directly. Those words of Fourth made Mark feel complicated. First, because he was being complimented by a little girl. Second, it meant that he was actually in possession of energies from a demon deity that even an eye had a hard time eliminating. No wonder that a crystal was not created yet, and the Psi crystal was still working hard to condense it. It made Mark anticipate what kind of crystal would be created from that demon called Teray. While conversing, they passed by the chamber of the king. It was the same room that all kings of this tribe used, and Artile was very likely resting in that place. Pephile gave the doors of the chamber a complicated look before leading the group deeper into the castle. Soon, they reached the core of the castle, a single room at the center of a circular hallway. And there, Pephile manipulated the sacred trees to open the door. At the center of the room, there was a pedestal. Atop the pedestal was an item about the size of a police badge. It was the artifact called Mark of the King. Seeing the artifact, Pephile could not help but feel shocked. It was because the artifact was pulsating and glowing. Then, under the group's eyes, the artifact began to float. And it shot towards Pephile at an alarming speed. Day 155 to 1:05 a.m. Royal Chamber, Castle, Tamawo Ancestral Tribe, Municipality of Badian, Province of Cebu. The artifact called the Mark of the King flew towards Pephile. An item that was moving on its own, it was akin to paranormal experiences involving poltergeists. Furthermore, a supposedly static object shot towards Pephile the moment they entered at fast speeds. One would usually think that it was something dangerous. However, no matter how fast it was, none of them felt danger. Instead, it gave the feeling of excitement. It was like the artifact was a dog that was waiting for its master to return. Or a child that saw their parents after a long time of separation. That was why even though the artifact shot towards Pephile at a dangerous speed, none of them felt any kind of danger. It was most likely that it would stop even before it hit Pephile. But then, as the artifact reached a close distance to Pephile, it was suddenly flung even faster towards the opposite side of the chamber. The Mark of the King bounced on the floor several times and on the wall once. Then, finally, it came to a stop. He swatted it. Yep, he swatted it. Fourth and Mark respectively spoke as they saw the scene in front of him. It was the scene of Pephile with his outstretched right arm after he swatted the artifact away like a disgusting bug. Even 19th was also speechless at the sudden unexpected scene in front of her. It was a hilarious scene. And to say, the two eyes actually felt satisfied seeing an artifact left by a foreign god to be blatantly rejected by a creature created by the same god. Nonetheless, after the mark of the king was flung away, it did not remain on the ground. It immediately floated. This time, however, it did not try to approach Pephile. Instead, it faced Pephile like a confused person. Is this an item that gained sentience? Mark could not help but ask. At first, when Pephile said that it could choose a king, he thought that it only followed certain conditions. Now, however, he was sure that he was mistaken. For an item to behave like this, it should be either being controlled or had gained sentience. The artifact being sentient did not surprise Mark, however. It was not the first item he saw that had an ego. The first one was the Psi crystal, although its ego was next to non-existent, and the second was Ignis, which even formed its own spirit. Something created by a god had more chance of being sentient in the first place. It did not gain sentience. 19th replied to Mark's question. Instead, its creator left her will, forming an artificial spirit inside the artifact. This spirit on its own should not be able to form its own ego. Instead, it is only capable of forming the connection between the artifact and its creator. Am I correct? 19th added, suddenly facing the floating artifact. Do not try to pretend, I know you are already listening. At 19th's words, the artifact that focused only on Pephile turned to her. And there, the room suddenly bloomed with bright light. Strangely, however, the bright light was not blinding. Mark stared in the direction of the artifact, feeling weird. After all, it was strange to be able to stare at a bright light without hurting your eyes and feeling blinded. In fact, there was a tinge of darkness from that supposedly blinding light. Then, a surge of energy enveloped the whole chamber as the bright light slowly vanished. It was accompanied by the sudden appearance of a figure appearing out of thin air. It was a gorgeous woman wearing a bluish-white gown. The gown had a gradient color which turned darker as it went down to the ground. While the color of the upper part of the gown felt serene, the part that touched the ground felt ominous. The woman was also wearing a similar gradient-colored semi-transparent veil on her face. Her head had an exquisite calcite crystal crown adorned by both white and black pearls. She also had a necklace, armbands, earrings, and bracelets, all decorated with opals and pearls. It was an appearance different from what Mark had from illustrations. Nonetheless, without a doubt, the godly aura around the woman introduced who she was. Magwayan, the Visayan goddess of the sea and the underworld. Nonetheless, Mark could not help but frown. Not only him but both 4th and 19th had the same expression. It was because, despite the godly aura that enveloped the place, the woman in front of them was not the real thing. It was nothing but a projection, an avatar that served as a means of communication created by the goddess. I never thought that for the first time, my blessing was rejected by the newly chosen king of Tamawas. The projection of Magwayan stared at Pephile, who was now having a hard time breathing. Although she looked calm, she was not controlling the pressure exuded from her avatar, making anyone weak enough to feel suffocated. It was very likely that she was angry by what Pephile did. It sure was disrespectful to swat an artifact bestowed by her like a disgusting bug, after all. Nonetheless, Pephile was a Tamawo, a descendant of her creation and the newly chosen king. There was no way that she would make it too hard for him. The kind goddess retracted the pressure around Pephile, allowing him to breathe. However, it was clear that Pephile was severely impacted by her godly aura. He staggered backward and only managed to stand after he leaned his back on the wall. Magwayan then turned to the other three. There was no sign of fear or contempt in her eyes as she stared at the eyes in a demon. All there was present was calmness. The two protectors of Earth and a demon, no, a potential god. What an unexpected combination, not to mention a potential demon god originating from a supposedly magicless world. Magwayan serenely sized the group. Is it now time for the Tamuo's existence to cease? It would be a pity, but it could not be helped if they were already found. You seem unfazed by us. How strange. 19th spoke with a frown. Usually, foreign gods would show a variety of expressions and emotions after they were faced by the eyes. Was it? Magwayan replied. Do not be mistaken. I would be afraid if we were to fight in that world, but that was it. With those words, there was no need to ask. You are currently not on Earth. Fourth, with a serene face, spoke. It was kind of uncanny to see her looking serious compared to her usual behavior. This just showed how powerful the goddess in front of them was, despite being just an avatar. However, the strength of Magwayan was not the problem here. It was that the goddess was not on Earth any longer. It meant that it was unlikely for her to be of help on the incoming disaster. I had long returned to our realm when the eyes began hunting the gods, Magwayan stated calmly. It seemed that you, eyes, are still unaware. It should not be surprising. Despite your unrivaled strength as Earth's protectors, the eyes are not omnipotent. It was the same for us gods. But with how you two are here looking for me, there should be other gods still hiding in that world. How long has it been? There was no contempt in Magwayan's voice. However, both 4th and 19th could not help but feel insulted. Actually, we are not here only for you specifically, Mark interjected as the atmosphere between the goddess and the eyes was getting sour. The eyes already stopped hunting the remaining gods. Instead, in exchange for their help, the eyes and the observer will allow them to ascend peacefully. Is that true? Magwayan was surprised as she turned to the eyes for confirmation. What he said is true. 19th nodded. Earth is currently facing a disaster that would need the help of the remaining gods. That is why we are gathering them for their help in exchange for a peaceful ascension. An ascension to a higher realm. What a tempting offer. Magwayan dejectedly shrugged. Unfortunately, the gate from our realm to yours had long closed. Or else, I would have accepted that offer. A disaster that needed the help of gods. Is it connected to the overflowing stench of death in this world right now? It seems to be a very serious one. Magwayan added. Actually, we had another reason for searching for you. Mark spoke once more after getting 19th's permission. We want to ask about Kaptan's whereabouts. Magwayan turned to Mark. Suddenly, the atmosphere turned dark, with a tinge of sorrow. Why do you seek for the supreme sky god? Magwayan asked. It's Sonogo, or at least, his empty body, Mark replied. You can say that the dead are coming back to life in the form of undead monsters. The dead Sonogo absorbed the magic from the seal that confined him and is currently a great threat that the eyes can't intervene with. Sonogo, you say? Magwayan was quite surprised. If he did become an undead creature bearing the supreme sky god's magic, it would definitely be a disaster. So you wanted to extract the supreme sky god's magic from it, I presume. It seemed that Magwayan understood the consequences of the infected Sonogo's existence. This made 4th a bit hopeful. Even if Magwayan was not here, she might be able to give crucial information about Kaptan's whereabouts. This could lead to removing a great threat within her territory. Then, 4th was about to speak, but Magwayan immediately interjected her. Unfortunately, there is nothing we can do about it. What do you mean? Mark asked with a frown. After all, if Sonogo continued to grow, there was no doubt that the home he created would be impacted. Do none of you find it strange that Sonogo, a being highly valued by the supreme sky god, was left to rot in his seal under the sea? Magwayan asked. The supreme sky god would definitely take him away the moment that the observer was replaced and the eyes started to oust the gods. It was a good question. The sky god Kaptan was a ruthless god. Without hesitation, he killed his grandchildren because of the sin they committed. Even killing his granddaughter without basis because of his anger. Yet, Sonogo was just left in a seal despite stealing a valuable artifact from him and being nothing but one of his 3 messengers. It was also stated in the myths that Kaptan valued Sonogo highly. Thus, Kaptan definitely would take Sonogo away first before going into hiding or returning to their realm like what Magwayan did. But with how Magwayan spoke, it was unlikely that Copton returned with her. Nonetheless, it was unexpected that Magwayan actually managed to return to their realm. There was no myth that stated that they had the ability to freely travel through dimensions. Or maybe, unlike Bathala that entered Earth after ascending from his realm, the Visayan gods could enter and leave their realm like the gods in Western myths. In any case, their ability to traverse dimensions was not the problem right now. The problem was that Sonogo was left despite being highly valued by Copton. Or maybe, Copton never had the opportunity to retrieve Sonogo in the first place. Wait. Mark spoke while he racked his brain. You still appeared within the Visayan myths of man's creation. There were even the myths of Tamuo's creation. But after the rebellion of Lacalabutan and the myths of heavenly creations, there was no mention of Copton anymore. Don't tell me. Mark turned to Magwayan, only to see her nod, understanding his assumption. The supreme sky god, no, my beloved Copton. He had long departed the living. Magwayan stated with a sad expression. Day 155 to 109 a.m. Royal Chamber, Sacred Tree Castle, Tamawo Ancestral Tribe, Municipality of Badian, Province of Cebu. The myths about the ancient Visayan gods were too vague. It was the truth that no one would be able to refute in the modern era. Most of these myths were nothing but passed down hearsays with almost no written or illustrated records. Because of this, the exact details of the events were buried in the past without anyone to remember. In the first place, what could a mere human understand about the actual circumstances of the gods? Some of the details could be true, but being passed on from one mouth to another would cause changes that would make it stray far from the truth. Not to mention that the Spanish colonization of the Philippines in the past literally erased most of the culture left by the ancient Filipinos. After stating that sky god Copton was dead, Magwayan relieved the details in her mind. It all started during the rebellion of Lacalabutan. The myths said it simply. The three grandchildren of Copton, Lacalabutan, Liadla, and Libulan, tried to usurp the sky god's position with the eldest leading the rebellion. Nonetheless, it ended with the three being killed by the lightning smite of the angry Copton, and even the innocent Lasuga perished soon after. It was too simple. Too simple to the point of being suspicious. It was as if it was told in a way that would favor the winner despite the odds. A battle of supreme beings would not end in such a manner. Not to mention that despite having a body made of stone, Lacalabutan was no beast. He was an intelligent being capable of thought. Even with his arrogance, Lacalabutan knew that he was not an opponent to his grandfather in a face-to-face battle. Even if his two brothers were with him, there was no way that they would win. That was if they were to fight directly. As the myth stated, the siblings did blow up the gates protecting the sky world, Kahilwayan. However, that was nothing but a way to lure the sky god into an ambush. They blew up the gates in a stealthy manner and pretended that someone else did it. It was not surprising since gods in that era had many enemies, and the contest was tight. At the time that the sky god lowered his guard, the three lower gods made their move. It turned into a bloody battle. A mysterious storm raged above Canlaon and caused the volcano to erupt prematurely. In the end, Copton killed his three grandsons with his lightning. But even so, Lacalabutan's ambush successfully managed to fatally injure the sky god. His source, the gathering of his magical energy, was broken by Lacalabutan. And to a god, a broken source was irreparable. It was one of the causes of a god's death. Their source weighed as much as their lives. As a supreme sky god, his broken source pushed him to utter madness. It was the same rage that caused him to kill his remaining grandchild. The unfortunate thing, all of it happened during Magwayan's absence. Everything could have been prevented if she was there. However, as a god of the underworld, she had her duties to fulfill. She could not stay by their side all the time. As Copton calmed down from his rage, the last thing he did was to use his remaining energy to envelop the bodies of his grandchildren, except Lacalabutan, with everlasting light. And as said by the myths, the three formed the sun, the moon, and the stars. Was it true? Did the three turn into those heavenly bodies? Yes. But not in this realm. Asterisk 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 inside the ancestral chamber, there was only silence. The supreme sky god of Visayan myths, Kaptan, was dead. It was a piece of information that neither Mark nor the eyes wanted to hear at this moment. They needed Kaptan to at least remove his magical energy from the infected Sonogo. That way, Sonogo would be weakened enough for Mark to fight him. It was the only obstacle that blocked Mark from confronting the creature. Without Kaptan's magical energy, all that Sonogo would have left was his gigantic size and his infected army of mutated marine animals. It could be difficult, but Mark was confident that he could kill Sonogo as long as the monster did not have that magical energy from Kaptan. Now, that thought went all down the drain. If Kaptan was dead, there was no way for them to remove his magical energy from Sonogo. In the end, he would become a threat in this country. So, we came to this place for nothing. Mark shrugged his shoulders with a sigh. If it was possible, Bathala could likely suppress Sonogo even if his powers were severely weakened. However, the eyes would not let that happen. Although Earth was in danger, its rules came first. A foreign god should not intervene with Earth's affairs. Furthermore, the observer and the eyes already made an exception and proposed a deal to the remaining gods. Their remaining powers were far more needed to deal with the incoming planetary debris that would hit Earth. In any case, there was nothing they could do. Mark was extremely interested in the infected Sonogo. However, he would have no choice but to suppress his gamer tendencies. Maybe in the future, they will find a way to deal with Sonogo even without Kaptan. No, Mark already had an idea. He had someone promised to meet in the future. It was likely that he will meet them soon. Unfortunately, we did waste our time. 19th agreed with Mark. They thought that they would find a god that could help with Earth's current predicament. However, Magwayan had already left Earth, and Kaptan actually died. It was in these situations that 19th would feel frustrated. After all, she had no grasp on information about anything directly related to gods. They were foreign beings, after all. Not to mention that all gods were not tied to any string of fate. If 19th could use her book to find information about gods directly, they would not have a hard time, unlike what they were experiencing currently. You're also a goddess that ferried the dead, right? Mark asked Magwayan. You're not able to do anything? At Mark's question, the goddess looked at Mark strangely. You know nothing, did you? Magwayan asked Mark back. But it is not surprising. Even the people of the past knew nothing but assumed things about us. Mark fell silent. Should he feel insulted? It was true, however. Foreign gods of death and underworld don't work the way you might be thinking. Fourth spoke to Mark with a jeering look. They're not gods from this world. They had no grasp of this world's cycle of life and death. Besides, gods, no matter what realm, don't follow the normal reincarnation cycle. Even if a god died, one would not find their soul among the fairies sailing to the afterlife. Then, if they had no grasp on our world's life and death cycle, where do they bring the souls their fairy? Pephile, who was silent until now and hiding his presence, could not help but ask. Where else? Fourth answered. Back to their realm, of course. Fourth's answer made Mark turn towards Magwayan. The goddess did not deny it and nodded. I did not know about the others, but I have the duty to repopulate the souls in our realm. Due to the lack of birth of new souls, the human population in our realm is waning. We had no choice but to get souls from other realms if we wanted to increase our realm's population. So, basically, those souls god isekai'd? Mark suddenly blurted out. Isek what? Magwayan was confused at the sudden unknown word that Mark spoke. No, don't mind me. Mark shook his head. Something in my mind just leaked out. Are you not an interesting one? Magwayan spoke with her eyes smiling. To keep calm and think of unnecessary things in front of a goddess. I do not know if you are brave or just a fool. He's both. Fourth replied without hesitation, gaining Mark's glare as a result. At this time, 19th spoke. It is better for us to leave already. We gained nothing here, and we should not waste more time. Surely, 19th was being grumpy. Their time was wasted, and their hope was raised for nothing, after all. Even if Kaptan was dead, if Magwayan was still on Earth, it would be worth the trouble. However, the goddess they were talking to was just a projection. It would not be of help to any of the problems Earth was facing right now. No one is stopping you if you wanted to leave, Magwayan savagely replied to 19th. 19th glared at Magwayan. It was obvious that she already had the urge to attack the projection. However, 4th stopped her. You already said that we wasted time going here. Don't waste more time and energy on a mere projection. And there, both 19th and 4th began to leave. It did not take them long to leave the chamber since they moved pretty fast. Mark could only shrug. It was a pity that he would not be able to deal with Sonogo immediately. He then looked at Pephile, who was already itching to leave. However, Magwayan suddenly spoke, facing Pephile. The new king of Tamawas, I implore you to stay. My apologies, but I am no king. Pephile replied. There is no mistake. Magwayan stared at Pephile. You are the next king of your tribe. Why are you trying to push away your destiny? You should know that without the chosen king, your tribe would begin to decline. Why should I care about the decline of this tribe? Pephile sure was beginning to become angry. They could all die for all I care. Without a doubt, Magwayan felt Pephile's words offensive. However, the unexplainable rage inside Pephile's heart piqued her interest more. And there, Magwayan's projection flashed and appeared in front of Pephile almost instantly. By the time Pephile realized what was happening, Magwayan's right hand was already on his head. Pephile wanted to resist or, at least, retreat. However, he felt powerless as the goddess grasped his head. To the side, Mark was watching. He could tell that Pephile was feeling afraid right now. However, Mark did nothing. Even though it was just the projection of the goddess, he could detect her emotions clearly. While her movements seemed threatening, he felt no ill intent at all. And then, Magwayan's expression took a turn for the worse. Her eyes showed anger and pity at the same time. That look made Mark understand what was happening. Magwayan was reading Pephile's memories. It seemed that she finally understood why Pephile, the supposed king of Tamawas, was too adamant about declining that honorable position. She saw the reason why Pephile did not care about the well-being of the tribe any longer. Finally, Pephile managed to regain his strength. The first thing he did was to leap back, away from the goddess. But when he looked at her, her eyes were filled with helplessness. I now understand what happened, Magwayan spoke. It is a pity, but I won't force you any longer. In the least, take the artifact with you. It can help you in many ways. Aside from the chosen king, no one else would be able to use it. With those words, the mark of the king floated from Magwayan's hand towards Pephile. Pephile stared at the artifact and turned to Mark. The latter nodded, prompting Pephile to take the artifact. To think that the current king of the race I created would be working under a demon. I did not expect this to happen. Magwayan turned to Mark. I saw the things you did. I hope that you will continue to support Pephile and his family. With the king of Tamawas following your steps, the new tribe will flourish under your command. I just hope that you continue to treat them well. You don't have to ask me, Mark replied. I know how to take care of my people. I hope so. Magwayan stared at Mark's eyes. Then, the projection of the goddess began to vanish. It seemed that I'm all out of time, Magwayan stated, looking at her body before turning back to Mark. Find Kahilwayan. It still exists in that realm. Although I am not certain, there might be something there that could help curb the threat of Sonogo. I bid the two of you farewell. And there, Magwayan's projection vanished with an explosion of bright light. Day 154 to 1:09 p.m. Reading City, Pennsylvania, United States of America. The abandoned city of Reading in southeastern Pennsylvania was currently bustling with activities. While, without a doubt, most of the activities involved the infected, some of them were people. These people were none other than the survivors living in Mark's base, currently led by Odalina and Huey. It would be unexpected if the American government witnessed survivors from the Philippines here to scourge for supplies. This place was basically on the other side of the globe. Fortunately or unfortunately, there was no one else to see these survivors except for the infected and the members of Ouroboros. As per Mark's orders, they scoured the city and other nearby areas for supplies and equipment. Of course, it was not an easy endeavor. The number of teams they could dispatch was limited, not to mention that they only had a few vehicles to use to transport the supplies they collected. And before they could even transport the supplies, they needed to fight the infected every time. They took caution as their priority. Nonetheless, not everything would always go according to plan. While they managed to avoid casualties which were fortunate, they still had some people injured. And sadly, one of survivor that volunteered to join the teams lost an arm. They were also under pressure. Everyone knew that they were preparing for the second wave, but none of them knew when it was coming. Thus, they needed to move fast as they could and get ready if it suddenly came. Despite the few bumps along the road, one could not deny that they were doing better, unlike most survivors in the apocalypse. Well, that was until the other day. Roar. A roar could be heard shaking the eardrums of anyone around. It attracted all the infected in the vicinity to chase after the source of the sound. Along that very same street where the roar came from, a 3-meter-tall dog with golden fur ran across the road. Gruar. Loud growling, roaring sounds followed the golden-furred dog as hundreds of infected, both mutated and not, chased after it. There were different kinds of infected present. Most of them were biters, since the slower eaters lagged behind. There were a lot of mutated ones, however. There were large-bodied ones with thick muscles, bashing through the obstacles on the street. There were also thin-bodied infected, running and jumping across walls and roofs. Ha ha ha. Go. Laylaps. Attract more of them. We need to delay them from reaching the foot of the mountain. A girl's voice could be heard talking to the dog. A teenage girl was riding on its back. The girl appeared to be around 14, with a very lively demeanor. Despite riding on a giant dog while being chased by the horrendous horde of infected, she still had the time to enjoy things. Annika, don't play around too much. A static-covered voice of a woman could be heard as the radio strapped on the girl's arm sounded. If you're too careless and get injured, Uncle and Auntie will chew me off. Geez. Sis Alana. I know, I'm not a child anymore, alright. Annika replied on the radio. If there is someone you should worry about, it's Sis Colleen and Lil Sis Carla. Those two make more trouble than me. Since you know, then don't make trouble too, seriously, Alana complained. Okay. Annika sighed at Alana's nagging. You really sound like my mom, you know. As Annika said that, she told Laylaps to make a right turn at the next corner. They needed to gather and delay as many infected as possible. It was their mission here. Atop the roof of Central Middle School a few blocks away from the foot of Mount Penn. Alana shook her head. Although Annika was doing a good job while being partnered with Laylaps, she loved to horse around. Being around the childish pair of Colleen and Carla did not help in relieving her stress either. What was the source of their stress, and what was going on with the city? Just the other day, the infected began acting weird. So far, they had started to identify infected hordes into two categories, territorial hordes and wandering hordes. Wandering hordes was self-explanatory. They were nomadic hordes that wander around all over the place. There were also two types of wandering hordes, unorganized and organized. Unorganized wandering hordes, also called leaderless hordes, were groups of infected that gathered just by chance. They might have grouped up by coincidence and traveled together, or the infected in the horde shared similar traits. They tend to just continue traveling together but could also break apart at any time. Once they encountered another horde with a leader, they tend to get absorbed into the latter, however. Organized wandering hordes were the opposite of the previous type of horde. They wander around with a leader type, going to places that the leader of the horde wanted to go. They tend to grow larger as a wandering hordes were most likely to encounter each other. They would absorb leaderless hordes into their ranks. The other category of infected hordes was the territorial hordes, also self-explanatory. They were hordes that frequent a certain place without going too far from it. Unlike wandering hordes, territorial hordes were not divided into subtypes, at least currently. So far, territorial hordes tend to have one or more leader types within them. Why was this information brought up suddenly? It was because it had something to do with the strange behavior of the infected. A few days ago, they only had to scope and map the place, and they would be able to maneuver across the outskirts of the city without too much confrontation with the infected. Territorial hordes tend to not wander off too far from their territory. As such, if those territories were avoided, they only had to deal with the infected that did not belong to any hordes. But the other day, the territorial hordes they mapped began moving away from their territories. In fact, they started behaving like wandering hordes. The difference, however, was that the hordes were all moving towards Mount Pen. It was the worst thing, of course. After all, their base of operations here was the pagoda, situated atop Mount Pen. Although they had countermeasures scattered across Mount Pen, like the illusion magic of tikbalangs and walls of vines made the dryad, it would still be questionable if these defenses would be able to withstand hordes with tens of thousands of infected. Thus, once the phenomenon started, they all considered pulling back the operations from this place, and today, they began to transport all the remaining supplies they gathered towards the portal Spera opened. But, of course, it would be hard to do all of it quickly. They had little manpower, after all. Thus, they needed to delay the incoming hordes as much as possible. If it came to a point that they could not handle it any longer, they would have no choice but to abandon the remaining supplies. Nonetheless, what was the cause of this strange phenomenon? No one had a concrete explanation aside from one suspicion. At the center of Reading City, one of the ground zeros, a tower of flesh appeared overnight. At night, its tip would emit a red glow like a telecommunications tower. And at those times that it was lit, the infected across the whole city seemed to behave more aggressively. Without a doubt, it was some sort of infected mutation. Unfortunately, there was no way for them to check it as extremely dangerous. Another horde is spotted at the northwest near the high school. Alana's radio sounded with Huey's voice coming through. It's a horde with approximately 300 infected. They're moving south in your direction, Alana. Should I go? Alana replied to her radio. However, before Huey could give approval, another voice spoke. Leave this to me. The voice of a man spoke. The road there is wide. It will be hard to keep them in place if anyone else came, but my ability can take advantage of the concrete road to block them. Are you sure? Huey's voice sounded on the radio. It hadn't been long since you woke up. You should concentrate on recuperating. I'll be fine. The voice replied. I can recuperate all I want after this. I can't just stand to the side while the people that saved us were facing a crisis. Besides, I have Felicia with me. It's not like we are going to fight the horde to death. It's still far to be considered a crisis, though, Huey replied. Okay, you're free to go. Just take care. Boss would hit me if something happened to you before he comes back. Don't worry. The voice confidently spoke. I don't plan on going into another coma before I met the person that saved us that day. All right, we're going. Hearing the exchange on the radio, Alana shrugged. It seemed like she was still stuck here to babysit Annika. There was also Colleen and Carla not far from her position dealing with another horde. Seriously, why do I have to babysit children? I'd rather go fight too. Alana complained. Asterisk. Let's go. A man spoke as he rode a motorbike. On his back seat, Felicia sat worriedly. Is your body already fine? Felicia asked. Well, not really, the man replied. But I have to earn my keep. If I don't work, I don't deserve to eat. I learned it at the time I'm still a refugee. Okay. Just don't push yourself too much, Lewis. Felicia sighed with a shrug. Nonetheless, she seemed happy. And there, the man pulled the gas and drove the motorbike to the location of the horde. Asterisk asterisk asterisk, it did not take the two too long, and they arrived at the location. The horde was slowly wandering towards the south, passing in front of the Reading Senior High School campus. Once the horde spotted the motorbike and the pair that rode it, the infected all turned aggressive and rushed towards their prey. Looking at the incoming horde, the man did not waste time. He jumped off while Felicia took the handle of the motorbike. Landing at the center of the street, the man bravely faced the horde. Roar! The fastest mutated infected rushed towards the man the moment he landed. It was too fast that it could likely chase the motorbike at top speed with ease. However, when the mutated infected was about to claw the man into two, a huge chunk of cement hit the infected's face, crushing it into meat paste. "None of you are going any further, you bastards," the man declared as he lowered his body and touched the concrete road with both hands. Crack! 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 Loud cracking sounds were heard, but the infected were not intelligent enough to pay attention. And as the horde thought that they were having a feast, they lost sight of their prey as something blocked their path. What appeared in front of them was a wall made of stone and concrete. It looked as if the concrete road suddenly folded upwards to block their way. "All right," the man roared. "As I thought, my powers grew stronger." The man then slapped the ground, causing the concrete road he stepped on to rise up. Standing atop the tower of stone, the man looked down on the horde. Some of them were already trying to climb the wall he created. But before any of them managed to climb or jump over the wall, the man waved his hands. Bam! Bam! Boom! Crash! Different sounds echoed as chunks of stone and concrete flew to bash the heads of the climbing and jumping infected. The chunks of stone floated around the man, ready to strike any incoming enemy. This man no other than Lewis Morgan, the inheritor of the ability of General Gordilius, geotelekinesis. A few days ago, after the departure of Mark's group, he woke up from his comatose state. Instead of recuperating, however, the moment he managed to regain enough strength, he began to actively help in any way he could. He wanted to repay that debt that was saving not only his life but also the lives of the people with him back in Atlantic City. And now, here he was, exhibiting his prowess that was strengthened after he used earthen resonance, which far surpassed his limits and survived.